All right, welcome back to the podcast. This is episode 152, as you guys can all see in the headline. I don't even know why I actually go about and saying what number we're on because
Well,
they
not
already
everyone
know.
looks at it. They
Because
just
they've
go,
already
hey, there's a
clicked on
new
it.
episode. Let's listen.
All right. Well, this is your boy East Coast Trev, and
This is Steve.
what's up, Steve?
Same old,
I know.
brother.
It's kind of crazy, right? I mean, it's always something going on, man. And
Been a busy week.
And of course, yeah, it's been nuts, dude. I mean, fishing is like full-fledged going on. We're in the new moon, which we talk about this in the podcast about the moon phases and how important they are to the fishing world. And in all reality, it's great because one thing that they've changed here in Connecticut is that we have a slot limit on striped bass, and so you can keep 28 to 35 is your slot on your keeper size. Anything under over's got to go back. And we've noticed here in the new moon, we're like 2 or 3 days away from the new moon at this point, maybe 2 at this point, and literally we fished an ebb tide this afternoon and could not find those slot fish because those big giant stripers, those 25 to 35, 40-pound fish are just going berserk. And it's the middle of the day. It was 11 to 4 in the afternoon. We caught 3 slot fish. We fished our ass off. We had 17 fish over 35 inches, which is phenomenal. I mean,
that's a good day.
Like straight phenomenal. Straight phenomenal. We've had 50 pounders. We're seeing more 30 to 40 pound fish than we've ever seen. So the slot is absolutely phenomenal.
Well, and it's funny because
it's been nuts.
In one of the real previous episodes, you talked about 50 pounders being kind of you don't see them. Even the greatest don't see them. But you guys legitimately, right after we recorded that, pulled out multiple 50s.
Well, actually, it was this episode that we were talking about 50s.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. You turned around right after we recorded this and pulled out 50s.
And it's not, so it was 51 and some change, and it is one of those staples. It's like catching a giant muskie, as Scott talks about in this podcast, and it's like those are just absolute monsters that not everyone fishes their life. So like in the striper world, you fish your entire life to catch a 40 inch plus fish, which is only about 22 to 25 pounds, depending on the time of the season. But like to catch a 50 plus inch fish, which around August, September, that fish is about a pound an inch. So, I mean, they're monster fish. And it's that time of year. Like, we get to this new moon here in the next couple of days, and literally for the next 5 days, we're going to see nothing but giant fish. And I don't know what it is, and it's not the tide. We talked about the tide, I think, in this podcast.
Yep.
But it's not the tide, because the tide is the slowest running thing this new moon. So it's only running at like 3.1, 3.5, which is not really all that high on an ebb, and then like 4.7 on a flood. So it's really not that fast compared to what it would be in a full moon tide. So it's just the moon thing. I don't know. It's just weird. It's unexplainable. It's the same with bucks and rut and the moon.
Exactly.
Like, it's unexplainable. Like, you
new moon,
think you have it figured out,
and
you don't have it figured out. Like, it's just one of those things. But it's been amazing, man. It's the heart of our fishing season. The fishing has been absolutely phenomenal. We're seeing so many great fish. Captain Mike killed a close to like 250 pound thresher shark today. There's a ton around. It's been great. The fishing has been great. The tuna fishing has been great. Everything. We're in the heart of the heart of the heart of good fishing season. And I think that it's probably one of the better ones that we've seen in a very long time, at least the early 90s in the striped bass. And it's only going to get better from here on out, man. Some of these regulations that we put into play have really started to take effect. They really have.
That's
honestly.
awesome. I'm happy to hear that.
It's a blessing. You know, it really is. I mean, those are those things that, like, you know, we have a lot of older gentlemen on the boat, and they'll be like, oh, we got to kill that thing. Like, I can't believe I'm letting go of 45-inch fish, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, well, bro, not for nothing, but, like, that's the reason why we don't have that. And a lot of people don't realize that, like, striped bass, over a 35-inch range, those are breeding fish. They have 200,000 eggs in them. And they're at that point where they're at their sexual maturity, where those are our breeding fish. So when you start killing those, now you're killing generations. And I'll throw this even out there even further, is that in the next couple of years, we're gonna have even more problems with catching slot limit fish, because all those slot limit fish that we didn't get are now giant fish,
Right.
and there's nothing coming from behind. So what was when we're chasing 50 pounders is a staple, 60 pounders is going to be that staple. I personally honestly believe, because if they stay in this realm, I think that we're going to see some of the best fishing that we've ever seen, because these regulations are actually taking effect and they're actually doing the things that they're supposed to be doing. We're always
Nice.
10 years behind. That is a promise, but it is what it is. That's just the way it goes. There's nothing we can do.
Write it out, man. See how it
Nice to see
goes.
good fish. You know what I'm saying? It's nice to see good fish finally. You know,
No
and
doubt.
those moons play a big deal. So it is what it is. But I'm honestly, we're that much closer to hunt stock. I am so pumped about it. We've been getting ready for it on the camping side, because we get to camp, because we are obviously podcasters and or YouTube guys or vendors or whatever you want to call us. But we get to camp there, so we're looking forward to that. And then getting all the new things going. We have a ton of giveaways from all of our sponsors across the board. Um, I mean, I'll run right through them here instead of doing an actual commercial like we always do, right? I mean, it's probably easier that way.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I'll start off with obviously Nor'easter Game Calls. They're actually donating a whole entire call line. There's a mix of all kinds of new calls, old calls, stuff that we haven't even seen before. So that stuff will be on the table at Huntstock. Rack Bracket has donated a ton of t-shirts to give away for Hunt Stock, which they're not even sponsoring. This isn't even their time of month. They do 6 months on, 6 months off. They swap it out with Bow Fishing Magazine. They're giving away a ton of stuff. So that will be on the table. Also, Zeus Broadheads has a ton of stuff that they're going to give away here at Hunt Stock. We have Latitude, the Method 2, Classic 2, sorry. So the single panel saddle, we have one of those to give away. Who else? What am I missing here, dude?
Zeus.
Um, Zeus. I already said that.
The fishing trip.
Oh, the fishing trip from Captain Says Sport Fishing. So we're gonna give away a 6-pack charter for striped bass fishing, like we were just talking about. So we're gonna give away one of those, value of $675, 5 hours on the otter. So that we're gonna give away there. I think that's it. I mean, there's just a pile of great stuff that we're giving away at Huntstock. Oh, and not Huntworth. They're giving away a top, a
full
bottom, and a
set.
hat, a full set of early season stuff. So that's amazing. There's just a ton of stuff. We have a ton of giveaways. We have a ton of merch that's never been seen, stickers, hats, all kinds of good stuff. It's all going to be there. So make sure you guys, if you haven't gotten your tickets yet, make sure to get them. Use the promo code Outdoor Drive on that one, and get yourself a ticket. Show up at least one of the days, if not all three. We're going to be there. We'll be podcasting. We're actually on the main stage on Saturday afternoon, I believe.
And Saturday
correct me if I'm
morning.
wrong. Well, no, Saturday afternoon from 1:45 to 2:45, and then we're on there Sunday morning,
Right.
from 9:30 or 9 to 10 or 9:30 to 10. I don't remember. 9:30 to 10:30. We have an hour slot on Saturday, and then there's an hour slot on Sunday. So we'll be on the indoor on Sunday, and then the outdoor main stage on Saturday. So we'll be podcasting there. We're really looking forward to it. Also, Vital Ground Outdoors, they're giving a bunch of stuff away at our booth also. So, I mean, there's tons of giveaways. I think we're giving away more stuff than Huntstock. No, not really, but there's a ton of door
we're giving
prizes.
them around for their money.
We're just giving away the house, man. That's just what we're gonna do. So, and all of our sponsors are doing that. We really appreciate those guys. Go and check them out. If you're not gonna be at Huntstock, maybe we'll save something to give away to all of our listeners. Maybe we won't give it away the whole house at Huntstock. We'll see what happens. We haven't really come up with how we're going to do it or what we're going to do, but we just know we're going to give away a ton of stuff. And we want to give back to the supporters, for you guys that subscribe on iTunes, YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, you name it. We can't thank you guys enough for everything that you guys do. Do.
I knew you were going to say that.
I always do that, right?
Just saw it coming.
Yeah. If you guys haven't been over to the website, also there's a ton of new merch on there. A little bit of everything on the website. If you guys haven't checked it out, theoutdoordrive.com. It's all put together. It's some good stuff on there. Some of that stuff goes back to helping support us, which makes this podcast possible. So if it wasn't for you guys, we wouldn't be able to do so. But all right, enough of us rambling. Let's go and check out. Do we have is our boy Mike Salter on this week?
I believe so. Well, let's go ahead and roll him right in. Bringing you the news for the cruise is our good buddy Mike Salter. Take it away, Mike.
Hey everyone, we're going to start this one off in Michigan, where the DNR's Draft 2022 Wolf Management Plan is now out for public comment. The management plan is being updated this year using public input to identify prominent issues, assess public attitudes, and review biological and social science surrounding wolves. People are asked to take an online questionnaire regarding the management plan, and that is due by August 4th. Now to Iowa, where a couple of opportunities. First, the DNR has opened registration for a dove hunting and wing shooting workshop to be held on August 4th from 6 to 9 p.m. at the Butch Olson Shooting Range near Polk City. The program is offered to teach skills needed to hunt, field dress, and cook mourning doves to those with little or no dove hunting experience. Information will also include where to hunt, safe shooting practices, shooting techniques, and time on the gun range. The workshop is for those 18 years and older and costs $35, and you can register at https://tinyurl.com/4ks9csjh. Also in Iowa, the Amana Sportsman Club in Homestead will be hosting the DNR and Woods and Waters Project's Small Game Workshop on August 13th from 5 to 8 p.m. The workshop is for those 18 years and older and will include types of small game to hunt, scouting, equipment, shooting practice, and how to clean and cook small game. This workshop costs $25, and you can register at tinyurl.com/22EHV3PH. Now to Utah, where the Division of Wildlife Resources is proposing fee increases for hunting and fishing licenses and permits for both resident and non-residents due to inflation. The DWR is also proposing some minor rule changes and is asking for the public's feedback on all of these recommendations. The proposed fee increases for both resident and non-resident will roughly be 10% with a few exceptions. The regional advisory councils have started holding public meetings on the recommendations, with several still to come. The comment deadlines for Southern, Southeastern, and Northern RAC meetings is today at midnight. And for the Wildlife Board meeting scheduled for August 25th, comments need to be submitted by August 18th, so get those in. Now to Montana, where Fish, Wildlife, and Parks is looking for public input on revisions to the statewide elk management plan. FWP is seeking input on the existing elk population objectives and local elk management challenges that should be considered in the revision. FWP will be hosting a series of public meetings throughout summer and fall to gather ideas and input. The meeting dates, places, times, and other details are posted on the Fish, Wildlife, and Parks website. The deadline for public comments is October 15th, and comments can be submitted online, emailed to fwpwld@mt.gov, or mailed to FWP. Now some news on a couple of youth programs. First in Florida, where the Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission's July meeting They unanimously approved changing the name of the high school fishing program to the school fishing club program to more accurately portray the age range of the student participation. In 2021, the program welcomed 24 new and 13 returning clubs. The program offers funding for clubs committed to completing the curriculum, as well as pre and post tests and at least one conservation project. Club sponsors work to provide support and hands-on training in knot tying and gear assembly and assist with the club's local events. Info about the 2022-23 program will be announced this summer. So for more information on the program, go to myfwc.com/SFC. Lastly, to Kentucky, which is the latest state to now have the student air rifle program now available after 17 individuals were certified as SAR basic air riflery instructors. Kentucky now joins Missouri, Kansas, Iowa, Indiana, Pennsylvania, and Texas in offering the program, which is designed for grades 4 through 12 and provides a solid introduction to target shooting in a safe and fun way. For more information on this great new program, you can go to www.studentairrifleprogram.org. As always, if you have any news to send along, it'd be greatly appreciated. We've got a bunch of stuff coming in. You can reach out to me at Mike Salter on Facebook or bearded_bowhunter21 on Instagram. And with that, enjoy the rest of your ride.
The man, the myth, the legend, Mr. Mike Salter. We appreciate it. You guys can also come and meet him at Huntstock. I don't even know if he's going, but I'm going to make him go. So make sure you guys stop in and say what's up to Mr. Mike Salter. He'll be in the booth with us. So will Madman Mardick. So we can't thank those guys both enough for what they do for the podcast. But let's go on. Let's go see what Scott's got to say. What do you think?
Let's go full schoolgirl on this and get our hands wet in a little bit of musky.
Something a little bit different, especially with the fly rod. So
yeah, it's a fun one, guys. Stay tuned.
Let's learn. All right, we're back on the phone with Scott Grassi. Scott, you there, buddy?
Yes, sir, I am.
Hey, man, thanks for taking the time and joining us here on the drive.
Absolutely. I appreciate the opportunity, and I'm a big fan, so I appreciate it.
Really appreciate that, man. Really, really do. Why don't we turn this? Yeah, it really does, honestly. Why don't we turn this key, get this thing underway? Why don't you tell everybody who you are, where you're from, and what you do?
Well, actually, my name's Scott Grassi, as you said. I'm the owner, operator of Keystone Anglers Guide Service up here in northwestern Pennsylvania. And I guide for trout, steelhead, smallmouth bass, pike, and my favorite fish, which is musky. And it's all on the fly. And that's sums up what I'm all about right there.
Yeah, that's awesome. And that's kind of what sparked my interest when I had seen you actually on TikTok of all places and seeing all these giant muskie on the fly rod, man.
Yeah. It's a passion of mine and something that I'm kind of, when I get days off of guiding for different species, I'm out chasing muskie myself. I mean, those are the type of fish that kind of sparked my interest and kind of got me rejuvenated in the sport of fly fishing. It kind of got stale over the years fishing for trout and steelhead and stuff. Those fish are all fun, but they really don't challenge me. So the muskie definitely challenged me, and I go many, many days without catching a fish. So that's kind of what it's all about right there, being humbled, occasionally, and not just going out and catching a fish, but actually being challenged by the fish. So that's kind of do it.
Yeah. And that was something I was going to bring up. Is your favorite is muskie, and everyone knows the muskie is a fish of 1,000 or 10,000 casts, they say. So
it's the fish of 10,000 casts, unless you're fishing with a fly, and then it's 100,000 casts.
See, and that's what I was going to ask. Is okay, you took something that's already difficult and really amplified it. So.
Exactly. Yep. That's exactly what I did, and along that same line, whenever I first started fly fishing for these things, I didn't have a lot of knowledge on the sport. I didn't have anyone I could actually talk there wasn't a lot of resources out there for doing it. So I kind of did it on my own. And at the time I didn't have a 12-weight rod, which I use now. I was using my 7-weight. So I'm figuring, I'm going to make this even more challenging. I'm going to use a lighter rod. It just made sense at the time. I wasn't really understanding the whole process. And, we were throwing on a 7-weight rod, you're throwing, 3-4 inch flies. And now I'm throwing these things. I don't know if you could see them, but that's 16 inches right there. So casting big flies on a light fly rod for weeks and weeks, I ended up damaging my shoulder, and I'm paying for it right now. So.
Wow, that's absolutely incredible. Hey, like a 16-inch fly. Oh, there you are. We missed you.
Yeah, but 16-inch fly.
Wow.
I mean, it's the size I use most of the time. Other times I'll downsize and go, this is a 10-inch fly. And we catch a lot of fish on this too. So, but
That's awesome.
But throwing them on a light fly rod really wasn't the smart way to go. And I kind of regret it now because my shoulder's jacked up, and I probably don't have a rotator cuff left. And now my elbow's bugging me. So lesson to be learned there for anyone that wants to get into the sport.
Yeah.
So what is the weight on something like that? Like, you think fly fishing, I think, dry flies that are getting sucked off the top on a floating line, but how does this is totally different?
Totally different. This is, we call it chuck and duck. You're literally just chucking big meaty flies out there, and, there's different ways of retrieving them. You strip them in a lot of times, or recently I've been catching a lot of my muskie on a 2-hand retrieve, which is tucking the rod butt underneath your armpit and keeping your rod tip low in the water, and then just 2-handing it back in, like swimming these flies.
Okay.
I don't know if you guys can see this tail one here, this dragon tail, and that tail is going through the water exactly like a bucktail spinner that, gear guys use all the time. So that tail gets a lot of action off of these fish. So I've been using this technique quite a bit now that the water's kind of warmed up for us.
Recording in progress.
That's insane. Yeah, that's crazy. It's just mind blowing to me. So are you putting these things into structure, or how do you go about trying to find an area where these fish hide?
Yeah, what I've been finding, and what's really helped me figure these fish out as far as what their tendencies are, is I got a Garmin Panoptics a little over a year ago, the live scope. Mm-hmm. And what I've been noticing is, these fish are tucked away in structure, hiding in wood, bellied on the bottom, hiding around rocks and stuff when they're not in a total feed mode. And what happens is when they start wanting to feed, they start getting a little more active, and I'll start seeing them on the live scope quite a bit. That has been huge for me with feeding fish and seeing, kind of how they interact with their environment. I don't always see the fish. I just caught my biggest fish of the year the other day, it was a 49 3/4 inch muskie. And that fish came out of some brush. I never saw it. I mean, she just came out of nowhere and inhaled my fly right at the boat. So the live scope's not a be all end all, but it's kind of like a nice tool that I kind of, helps kind of see some of their different tendencies and stuff like that, and see how they kind of interact with their environment. It's helped quite a bit, honestly.
So are you looking for more like structure, or are they on I know when I was pike fishing a lot, we would get onto these grass flats this time of year. And is that the same for a muskie or some of these other fish? Absolutely.
Muskie are more in the lakes. The muskie kind of relate to like weeds. They'll do straight weed lines. They'll do submerged. They'll hide along submerged weeds. Weedy points are perfect for in the lakes and stuff like that. Our lake bite hasn't really been that stellar this year for some reason. So I kind of got off of the lakes, and I've been in the moving water situations a lot more. Those fish, like I said, they seem to hide in the wood. And what they do is when they start wanting to feed, they kind of get out of the wood and get into the kind of like the moving water to where the current's bringing their food to them. And they'll just literally sit in that current and wait for food to come to them. And then they eat anything that, comes close to them, which, hopefully is your fly at some point. So,
yeah.
But yeah, that's kind of the what's been happening with me and what I've been seeing recently. So.
Steve, that kind of falls into kind of what your area is with that little creek bed that comes off of feeding into the main river. and that would make a lot of sense why those
they'll
fish
just-
are hanging out in that area.
They belly right there. It's a big washout hole where a creek rolls right into the river, and they'll just belly up and watch that creek. And the theory is that, you know, you cast into the creek and bring it back down.
Absolutely. Yep. Yeah, that's exactly what you do right there. That moving water is constantly bringing them food. So I had a couple areas in the wintertime where it was like a big eddy and the water like just whirlpool.
Yep.
And the fish were eating, I would see them on the panoptics. They'd literally line up nose into the current and just wait for food to come in. And you know, it was just almost automatic with, you know, getting a fly in front of them and they were going to eat. So, yep, that current plays a huge part in their daily routine, obviously.
So I saw the other day that you were checking out a new spot. Well, when you go into that and you hadn't been there or fished that place before, what do you do to dissect that to try and find those fish in those areas in the spot that you didn't know? So for the people that are listening, if they were to say they like Steven or whatever, we're going to go to a new spot. What do you do to try and find those fish in those areas that you've never fished before?
Great question. I'm always looking for structure. Wood, like I'm drawn to wood, but I got a kind of an eye for the type of water that they like, and you know what I mean. It's something you kind of develop over time by fishing different moving water situations that you kind of eyeball, and when you see a spot, you kind of know it, so to speak. And like I was saying, like those woody areas that have like moving water next to them, they're magnets for those fish, because when they're not feeding, they're in that wood. When they're feeding, all they literally have to do is bump right out into the current and boom, they're eating. So I've been catching a lot of fish in that current that's butted up next to wood piles, or, you know, a lot of times there's waterways with big boulders and stuff like that. They'll tuck right against the boulder or behind the boulder. It's a current break for them, and you know, that current's bringing fish right past them, and all they do is bump right out, eat them, and go right back.
So they're more of an ambush. Yeah,
they're not always sitting in the wood. It seems like they're only sitting in wood and like structure whenever they're kind of inactive. And when they're active, they're out in the main current of moving water situations. And listen, it's the same way in lakes that I've found too. There's lakes where I'll be watching that panoptics. I'll recline on the boat. I'll be watching all day, and then when the bite turns on, you'll start seeing the fish where you didn't see them, you know, for 6 hours prior to that. What that means is they're hiding during that period of inactivity, and then when they start wanting to eat, they come out and they're moving around. You know, they'll kind of prowl like the weed beds and stuff like that, looking for, you know, injured fish or whatever. You know, that it just seems like that's what I've been seeing for the most part.
Gotcha. So I got a question for you. You talked about them hitting you right at the boat.
Yeah.
Now on a fly rod, how does that pan out? Because I know, you know, when your standard bait caster spinner, you know, they come in and everyone does, you know, the figure eights and tries to get them to strike on that at the end. How do you work through that with a fly rod?
You still have to figure eight, but instead of what we call a trout set, where you're raising your rod tip up like the gear guys, you have to keep your rod tip down and you have to strip in, you know, into the fish. So if they eat on the turn, which that's where you want them to eat, they're going to eat that fly, and then you want to come back against the grain on them. You have to pull back.
So you're setting that hook in there.
Yeah, so you're setting the hook
instead of pulling it away from them.
Exactly, and it's a tough deal with the fly rod, and I honestly, it's something that's kind of like my weak spot in my whole game, and it's something that I work really hard at trying to get better at. But I miss a lot of fish, or I lose. You know, you hook them for a second, and you know they get off. So it's really difficult to make it happen at the boat. But when it happens at the boat, it's a really cool feeling and a really cool experience to see a big fish eating. You know, a lot of times that mouth opens up and you'll see your fly go into their mouth, and you know it's just adrenaline packed. So yeah, it's pretty cool.
Right on.
Is there some type of so when you're in these, say, rivers or whatever, are you just working the edges looking for that nervous water where they are kind of hanging out, and you just keep on bumping around and just working those edges as you go down?
Absolutely. Yep. I just keep, in an ideal situation, you're in a little slower current and I don't have to work the boat as much. You can kind of just drift with the current, and I'll drift down, just pounding, everything that I see. And then if I like what I'm seeing, I'll just run back up and roll, just drift back down. I'll literally pound, a mile of water 5, 6, 7 times in a day, just waiting for them to turn on. And, there's times where you don't get a fish to eat, and 5 or 6 hours later, a fish eats right where you cast it in there,
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
That's the beauty of it. They kind of, you got to kind of have that mental fortitude to being able to wait them out. And, a lot of people would hit that a couple times and screw it, there's no fish there, I've just caught enough of them to know that, if you keep putting your flies in there, eventually, if they're there, they're going to eat at some point during the day. So, and it doesn't always happen, but, you're playing percentages with them, and you just have to keep putting your casts out and putting your time in, and they'll eat eventually.
Gotcha. So one question I did want to pick on is, you see a lot of people go after both muskie, pike, fish of those nature with either still leader or real heavy braided line, just so they don't get bit through. What kind of tippet are you using to kind of fill between that?
Yeah, my leader, I make my own leaders, and I use, I think right now I got 60 pound I'll use as my main leader. And then at the end of that leader, I tie a loop onto that leader, and then I have wire attached to my fly. I don't know if you guys can see.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So you are using wire. Is it like tieable wire?
It's nautable wire. Yeah. Okay. This is 60 pound nautable wire. I forget the brand that I use, but I know it's probably pretty hard to see, but I'll do a loop on the end of that, and then I just loop it, and then, I have a loop attached to my fly.
Gotcha.
So I don't like using swivels and stuff like that. It just adds some, a lot of stuff up in front of my fly that I personally don't like. A lot of guys use swivels, like quick snap swivels and stuff, and they have luck on them. I just don't personally like that. So this is kind of the system that I roll with. There's companies out there now, and it's the beauty of the sport growing is there's, some companies out there that sell, pre-made leaders for people just getting into the sport. You don't even need to worry about making your own leader. They come, you can get them with the wire attached to them already, and I think they're like $7 or $8. So that's a really nice feature for people that are just getting into the sport.
Nice. So building on that, most people, when you think fly rod, you're thinking dry fly with very lightweight, and you have to have that perfect cast to really get that out there. What's the difference running that heavy tackle? How does the cast work? Is it, you still got to fight it? You still got to have that smooth rhythm? Does it come easier?
Well, there's different casts. I kind of created my own cast where I flop it away from me. I'll do like a flop just to start generating a little energy in my cast. I'll flop it away from me, and then I pull it straight into one big back cast and then shoot it out. I try to limit how many times, because of my shoulder, I kind of had to adapt my casting, and this seems to be the best, and I cast pretty far that way. There's other methods. There's water loading casting and stuff like that that guys utilize all the time. I found with my 12 weight rod, I can chuck these flies like really easily without, beating my body up. And as long as I keep my cast down and just, because there's a lot of people that I take out for the first time and they want to do exactly what you're saying, like a straight double haul.
Right.
They'll false cast like three times on every cast, and you can only maintain that for so long before your body's literally falling apart, by
right.
a few hours a day. So, I try to tell everyone and teach them, to kind of keep that limited, and they will do it for a certain amount of time, and then they kind of revert back to double hauling. So it is what it is. The more you do this to do it, the easier it gets, and you kind of get into feeling your way around the casting, and you kind of, adapt to it. So it's a learning just like anything.
It definitely makes more sense to me. I mean, that the way you're doing it in my mind plays out like a kind of a standard cast, only you're not using a reel. You know, you're using that weight and just launching it.
Exactly. Yeah.
So it's more of like a hybrid roll cast kind of thing.
Well, I'm not roll casting in the sense I'm just doing one big haul. You know, that when I flop it out, I'm like kind of flopping it to get it away from me to kind of
you create that distance so that when you make that haul, you can strip that line and then let the weight of the rod do it.
Yeah, I'm booming those casts, so it's you know, it works really well. Now, I was fishing last week and I caught a fish and it torqued my shoulder up again, like pretty bad. Like the process of catching it and stuff, I just did something during that period that kind of jerked me up. So I kind of now I'm kind of keeping my rod low and kind of just not getting my arm away from my body when I cast. I'm kind of keeping it tight, and it seems to work well too. So that's something that I'm going to be doing probably a lot more of coming up here in the next few weeks. So.
See, and
be careful.
That was always my problem. Is I always went full arm and looked like a flailing idiot, and had to learn to keep my elbow in.
Yeah,
you know, and your cast is naturally better that way when you remember to do it. But again, that goes to another point. Who says fishing isn't dangerous?
Oh, it is. I got the shoulder and the elbow to testify to that.
I probably need 4 surgeries from fishing alone.
Well, 3 years ago, I had surgery scheduled, and I went in for my pre-op appointment, and the doctor was insisting it was going to take 5 months for recovery, you know, with therapy. And I was like, I'll be back in 3 months. He's like, he goes, I'm not even going to operate on you if you think that you're going to be back. Because I can't miss 5 months of work. I mean, you know what I mean? That was going into the fall of my steelhead season, where I'm literally working every day for 6 months. And so I ended up putting the surgery off, and I never went back. And here I am.
Well, you're going to have to take that season off before you know it to get it fixed if it gets any worse.
It's going to happen. I have a feeling. So
that's crazy. I want to take through. So if somebody is to hire you as a guide service, right, and they're going to take you out, what does a day look like for you during, you know, having a client on the boat?
Okay. For my musky trips.
Yeah. For like a musky trip. Yeah.
Yep. For the musky trips, I like to start everyone like at daybreak. I like to get on the water and start fishing, you know, at daybreak. I schedule most of my musky trips around either a new moon or a full moon. Like that week is, you know, theoretically your best time. Now I catch them outside of those moon phases too, but those moon phases are when we usually catch the most fish, and it's your highest percentage of catching a fish. So I try to schedule, you know, all my clients around those moon phases. So we start at daybreak, and I tell everyone you can, you know, I don't have a time limit on my musky trips. You literally fish until you're done or it gets dark. My steelhead and trout and everything, those are 8-hour trips, you know, like everyone else. But the musky, you know, I want people to catch a musky so bad that, you know, we're going to be on the water for as long as they can cast. And usually people will make it, you know, 9 hours or so, and then they start petering out physically. So that seems to be kind of the time frame for most people. I've had other guys that stuck it out longer, but you know, the reality is it's hard. I mean, it's a hard fish to fish for. It's a hard fly to cast. It's a hard day of fishing. So, you know, I don't put 12-hour days in anymore. You know, when I go out, I'm selective on my days. And so I understand someone that never did it before going out and only being able to fish 6 or 8 hours. You know, there's no shame in that. But, you know, I kind of let people fish for as long as they can on the musky trips, just because it's hard enough to catch them, you know, in a long period. You know, I couldn't imagine only fishing for 8 hours, you know, making it mandatory 8 hours. So
I want to go back on the moon thing, because I think in all fishing, moons can be very important. I know for us, tidal with the fast moving water is a huge thing for us with the gravitational pull and moving that bait across those areas very fast. Like the stripers, us striper fishing, they're an ambushing fish. So we use the moons in that aspect. What is kind of the purpose to the moons in the musky world?
It's my theory is they have a big lateral line, so they're feeling that pressure. They're feeling, that's why front come moving in. They feel that pressure change. The moon and the gravity and stuff like that. I think they feel it more than other fish, and there's literally something to it, because I've had it's just crazy on those days. Where you'll get a major period during that day. Like it'll be kind of slow fishing until that major or minor hits, and then boom, 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 So there's to it, there's something physically to it that triggers them to eat during those periods. So that's why I schedule my trips around those periods, and just because you're kind of adding, a little bit of percentage in your corner where, they're a tough fish to catch. So why not, throw the moon in there? What makes it even better if you moon and then you got a front pushing in, then you got the double whammy. So,
No.
Speaking of the moons, you had caught a muskie the other night, and that blew my mind, honestly, because I never thought that catching them at night, especially on a fly rod of all things, like that. What even made you go and try and do? Like, I've never even heard of it. Like targeting a muskie at night, like that's just mind blowing to me. Well, honestly,
I've heard people troll for them at night, but in my mind, fly fishing at night in itself is chaos. It just sounds like chaos to me. So putting the two together.
Yeah, what got me into doing it is that, and I've wanted to do it for a few years. I just haven't. It's hard to be like as busy as I am and then getting up in the middle of the night and going out musky fishing. You know what I mean? So I recently just had the time to really try to do it. And, I had the proper waterway to do it. And I'm like, you know what, I'm going to try to see what happens here. And, I had a couple good moons that I went out. And it's a cool experience, man. They freaking crush those flies at night. I mean, I don't know if you saw the picture of the fly in their mouth. They totally inhale it. They're out for keeps in the nighttime. So, but it was a great experience. And, the being in the pitch black and, hearing stuff in the woods and never knowing if Sasquatch is out, it all adds to the ambience of the night, So I was fortunate to be able to catch a couple good fish doing it. So it might be something that I do more of.
What was like the setup to it? Was it on a moon night? Was it, are you fishing the same type of areas and doing the same type of thing, or and it's just night out? And
that's exactly right. I'm doing the one that you're talking about. I believe that fish, I missed that fish the prior week, and the next week was a good moon. So I'm like, I'm going to just change it up. I'm going to go in at night and try to catch this fish. I knew where it was hanging out, and it was kind of risky where I was at because there's a lot of wood around and stuff, but I just was two-handing my fly, keeping my fly up, and sure as crap, that fish hit like right in the same spot that it was that it was at. So yeah, I'm just fishing the same waterways. I got a kind of a good idea where all the structure is and how I need to fish to keep my fly out of the structure. So it's worked out, honestly.
Nice.
So you keep going back to those same spots and being able to, when you see those fish, they're like a territorial, when they have their one home, that's their home, and that's really kind of where they hang out, and you can get multiple strikes on them.
Usually the big fish that I just caught the other day, she was, I don't know, maybe 50 yards away from where I moved her a couple days prior. So they're not necessarily always in the same spot, but I had an inkling that the first one I caught at night was in his area or her area, just because it was a prime spot in the middle of the channel. There was brush there. So I knew it was hanging out in that brush. And then whenever it wants to feed, it moved out to the front of the brush. And that's exactly where the fish was when it ate at night. So I don't know. It's just feel a lot of times and kind of figuring the fish out and their tendencies. And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't,
It's just a guess or check.
It is, but you don't know if you don't go and try stuff. So yeah. I'm willing to try different stuff and go out and experiment and try different things. So.
Gotcha. So one other thing that always comes up anytime we bring up muskie with anybody is landing it. How do you properly land a muskie without getting your hand chomped on?
Well, getting it in the net sometimes can be a pain in the butt. And it's hard when you're by yourself, because I'm always lifting up with my right arm, and my shoulder, the pain in my shoulder, every time I lift up, it's weaker, and trying to get them into a big net, it's hard in itself. But you got to be careful handling them once you get them into the net, because you want to reach into their gill plate without touching their gills, and just slide your fingers up to the front of their jaw, and you can grab them that way and lift them up and then hold them. But I've had them in waiting situations where I've done that, and they've gator rolled on me, and I got clipped on my finger last year. Had to get 7 stitches. And, it can be treacherous if you're not doing things right. So yeah, they got a lot of teeth in it.
Oh yeah.
How does that work with clients? Like, do you have a tough time? Like when we catch bluefish, I try not to even let customers even grab them, because they got jaws of pit bulls and they got teeth like them too. So it's.
Yeah, they are nasty. Those blues, man. I've seen the damage that they do to bait fish. Holy crap.
I got bit last week. It was miserable. Oh, it was miserable. I wasn't paying attention. It was my own fault. I was trying to get the hook out, and my hand just slipped right in his mouth, and he went whack. And then that's all it took. Whack. And dude, all the way around my finger, through my nail. It was miserable. Miserable. And the thing with the bluefish is that they have a non-coagulating bacteria, so they don't actually. So you're when you get caught by them, they don't coagulate. So they just bleed.
Yeah,
it takes forever to get it to stop not bleed. Duct tape.
I never knew that they had that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's miserable. That's what I've been told, is that they have that, and I can attest to it. But other people say because their teeth are so sharp. But dude, it just does not stop bleeding. Literally, some people have to go to the hospital because of it.
That's absurd. I've been fortunate with my clients. All the fish that they've caught, they've had fish that didn't have a hard time handling. Mm-hmm. Seems like for some reason I'm always getting the ones that are pissed off and hard to handle, and they want to gator roll on you and stuff like that. But yeah, I've been lucky with clients. So I always have an emergency kit in my boat for situations like that. So you try not to get people hurt, but it's bound to happen. You do it enough times, you're gonna get nipped. So
right,
it's not about if, it's about when.
Absolutely.
That's what we say on the water, no matter what.
Nobody has come up with like shark bite gloves for catching them.
They do. They do. They make a bite-proof glove. I don't know that I'm going to go and put my hands in. Yeah, I don't mess around with that. Lindy came out with one maybe 4 years ago. They came out with a bite-proof glove, and I was walleye fishing a ton at the time, and I wasn't trying to put my hand in its mouth to find out to see if it is. No, that's not really 100%. I want to dive kind of into your boat and kind of your boat setup, like what you use, and what kind of makes it ideal for what you're doing. Yeah,
I got a Hog Island skiff. You guys familiar with them?
Yes.
No.
It's kind of like a drift boat.
What's that?
Like a drift boat.
Well, mine's the skiff model. They do make a drift boat, but I have an actual skiff. I got a jet motor on the back. Okay. I got a front. I got a nice front deck to it, and then the back I have a bench seat that you can stand on, so I can take 2 people out, and one person throws out one side and the other person throws out the other side, and I'll be like in the middle of those 2. And casting out each side of the boat keeps people from casting over top of my head, so not
smart
area to be doing. But ideally, one person is like perfect, but I've taken lots of 2 people out, 2 people trips, and it works out fine as long as people cast properly. So,
can you go into really shallow water with that boat?
Oh, yep, that thing gets through like inches of water. It just straight up through that stuff pretty easily, and it's it's responsible for a lot of big fish that I caught, and I would have never caught without it. That's the reality of the situation. You got to get through skinny water a lot of times to get to those areas that people don't hit a lot.
Yep.
A lot of these waterways, you'll be able to get through certain areas in a regular prop motor, but you're limited on where you can go. So I like getting to those tough to reach areas, those brushy areas that I was telling you about, log infested waters. I zip through that stuff without any problem. So
yeah, we have a lot of them on the river here. It's actually what I started smallmouth fishing when I first moved here. A buddy of mine had one, and he's like, this is a good spot. And I'm like, okay. He goes, but we got to go up to a better spot. And he pulls up to this ledge, and I'm like, well, I guess we're fishing here. He goes, no, we're not. Zipped right up over it. I was like, this is amazing. I mean, they'll get you into places that, kayakers can't get into.
Exactly. That's what I love about it. So it's worth its weight in gold, honestly.
So do you find during like the spawning time, because like when you think of, I think skinny water, I think during the spawning time when I know with at least a pike, they get into these small creeks and get up as far as they possibly can out of, the main river or whatever. And is that those areas that you're trying to get up into?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm always into those smaller tributaries if I can. The reality is some of them you can't get up into, but so you got to find other areas that they might hold up in the springtime. But yeah, those are perfect, wintering and spring spots as those feeder streams. And I just caught a fish last week in a little feeder stream that I never fished before, and I was just scouting it out, and I got literally 50 yards into this feeder, and I missed it was a small one. I missed a small one, and I caught a nice one. So those feeders are definitely places to check out, for anyone looking to try to find muskie.
Now, is there like, bycatch? So like you get pike too in the mix when you're trying to do this, try and catch your target musky fish and stuff like that too?
Yep, those muskie sometimes, or the pike are a pain in the butt sometimes when you catch them, because you could be fishing for hours and boom, you get your bite, and then here it's a pike, and there's just not as much pizzazz with a pike versus, not the pike in Pennsylvania. They just don't get big, like get one in the low 30s, and that's a halfway decent pike for PA. But they're just not what we're after. They're a dime a dozen, so to speak. And I have waterways that have a lot of pike. You could go catch a bunch if you wanted to do that, but we're after muskie, so the pike will come. Occasionally we'll catch smallies on musky flies. Usually if you catch smallies with the musky flies, they're usually a big smallie, but you don't get the fight out of them on a 12 weight as you would with a 7 or.
I was going to say that's landing small fish on heavy tackle.
Exactly. It's unfortunate because some of the smallies that we've caught were like really big, but you just don't get any fight out of them. But trying to think what else bycatch wise. I've caught suckers on musky flies before.
Really?
Imagine. And the ironic thing is the times that I've caught suckers, red horse suckers, they were on a red horse sucker fly. So I don't know.
Trying to spawn with it or something. That's wild.
The thing is, they were legit eats too. The fish ate the fly. The hook was in their mouth. It wasn't like you snagged it in the back or something,
That's nuts.
So sometimes we catch bowfin, not a lot, but we've caught bowfin, and I think that's pretty much it. Largemouth occasionally, but
when they're big largemouth, obviously they take down a 9-inch fly. That's or 12-inch fly, whatever you're throwing.
6.5 pound largemouth I caught on one of these big flies. I caught a 6.5 pound largemouth.
Now with that fly, is that a tandem hook on the fly?
Yeah, it's a double hook. I know you guys probably can't see a lot of this, but yeah, there's an articulated. There's 2 hooks, and then on the end is a
trailer
clip, and you can take these tails off. I don't know, I can't see too well, but see how that tail came off? You can change.
Yeah.
A lot of times, like if I like a fly during the day, that color of fly, I'll just change if I'm not getting any action, I'll just change the tail color. This particular fly here is like a perchy looking fly.
Mm-hmm.
use gold tail a lot. I'll use orange. I'll use white. And that's pretty much it during the day. Now, at night when I'm throwing flies, I'm using dark, usually all black.
Right.
But this fly here, I caught, I think 2 or 3 at night on this fly. It's black with orange, and then I have a black tail on it. So,
who makes that fly?
These ones here are Nightmare Musky flies, and they're up in Wisconsin. These flies here I get from Streamer King Flies in Pennsylvania. He does a lot of these. These are articulated T-bones, they call them, like a changer T-bone. And we had clients catch a lot of fish on these this past spring. So it's a little smaller, a little easier to cast fly. So that's why I have my clients throwing those a lot of times. And
what size hook do they normally come with?
They're 6 and 5, 6 aught and 5. Yep, and they seem to work out perfect. I mean, when you pin them pretty well with these hooks. So.
That's so cool. It's just so different to what you're used to. Even saltwater fly fishing is not that extreme. Like you'll do some, not that. I mean, they'll definitely throw some bigger ones, some 8 and 9-inch flies, but they're not anything like that. Like, that's insane. Like, that is something from a whole different world when it comes to fly fishing.
Well, just to give you an idea, last spring I had a guy fishing on a lake, and we just started fishing. I looked down, and this fish was probably 30 inches, musky, and it swam past us, and it had probably a 24-inch sucker in his mouth, and it had a T-bone, and it just was swimming with it like a dog that had a bone in his mouth. So
wow.
They eat big forage. So, I mean, in reality, these flies aren't that big, compared to some of the stuff that they're eating, and these flies look big, but you get them in the water and they stream down, get them wet and they stream down, and they're like actually a skinnier profile. So they eat these pretty easily. But back to the saltwater, I went shark fishing last year, fly fishing for shark. I mean, those flies were literally this big that I was using. I'm catching, 4-foot sharks on them.
What were they, like shrimp pattern or something?
They're just like honestly, they're very similar to little smallmouth flies that I use up here. They're just some deer hair and like a leech looking thing. And that's what those sharks were eating, lemon sharks.
That's crazy.
Incredible.
Well, I guess like we always say, I mean, elephants eat peanuts, so
that's exactly right.
We say that all the time in the fishing world. Like, it doesn't have to be the biggest thing, because some people would say big bait equals big fish.
Big fish.
But I mean, with a pike and a muskie, I get it, because they're very predatory. They're very aggressive fish. They'll take down just about anything. They'll just kill things to kill things. I mean, that's why I strongly believe that they're just nasty little critters.
The thing is pike are way more aggressive than muskie. Pike, when they eat, they suck their prey into their mouth. They'll come in behind it and literally suck. And I've had 20-some inch pike totally make this fly disappear into their mouth, like literally coming out their gills. That's how far they eat these flies. Muskie tend to T-bone a fly. Like they come in and grab them from the side and they squeeze onto them like that. So that's where a lot of the times where you miss them, if you don't strip into them good, that they're only like literally holding that fly like that. So those hooks literally aren't into their mouth yet, so you got to keep stripping to get them to kind of release a little bit before that hook will set into their mouth. So pike, I don't know what it is with pike. They're just so aggressive and they eat so well. A lot of times I wish the muskie ate as well as they do.
Yeah, but it wouldn't be as fun if that was the case.
And get ready to say, then it would be easier, and then everybody would be doing it right.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm. So did the tiger muskie eat more like a pike, or do they eat it like a regular muskie?
You know what? I've never caught a tiger. All the tigers I don't fish a lot of waterways where there are tigers, but the times that I've ever hooked them, I've lost every single one of them for some. But so I can't, I think they do hit a little bit more they're a little bit more aggressive, but I can't, until I catch some, I can't really be,
That's like my unicorn also, because I've done the same exact thing. I've lost 2 of them and not landed a single one of them. And my buddies next to me caught like a 26 pounder, and they're like, dude, are you serious? Like, come on. They're always catching them. I've done 2 trips trying to kill one. I'm not, catch one. And I just never caught one. It's like my little unicorn, honestly.
That's
so irritating.
If I catch one, I want it to be a big one. Though there's a lot of places around here that have little ones, and I'd like to catch a big one, but yeah, they're
gorgeous fish.
Beautiful fish, absolutely beautiful. Yeah, that's like the Lake St. Clair ones with the spots on them. You guys ever see those? The musky with spots. They're beautiful. Up Thousand Islands, they have them up there. Real pretty spots. My son was just up there smallmouth fishing a few weeks ago, and he found a dead muskie that he measured. It was 55 inches. Ooh. It was dead, but it was absolutely stunning looking fish, just beautiful spots all over it. And so
that's like a Great Lakes fish.
Yeah, someone
big like that
handled it after catching it, and and it died. So
and that's another big point that I think we should touch on, because muskie are real sensitive fish. So you get him netted, you get him in, you get the hook out. What's the typical procedure to release them back safely?
Well, you got to do it as quick as possible. Net them, boom, you're already getting the camera set up, pulling them out, getting a quick shot, and back into the water as fast as you can. Water temperature wise, I don't fish any waters that are over like 74 degrees is like kind of my cutoff for them. The water that I'm in recently that I'm having a lot of luck in is the water is literally 68, 69 degrees. So I'm like in perfect water for some reason.
Yeah, that kills us out here on the Shenandoah, because our water temperature is 84, 85 degrees right now. You don't even go after them until late fall. That water's got to get down, because you pull one out right now, you're going to kill it.
Absolutely. And I just did a podcast a month or so ago with some guys, and they're all musky guys, and we were talking about the same thing. And, some fish are more, I almost think that like the individual fish have their own temperament when it comes to being able to handle a stressful catch and release. I've caught fish that literally it was a minute process that started stressing, over nothing, and the water was 45 degrees,
Wow.
I have had other ones that, you're trying to get a hook out of them, it might be down in there, and you're trying to get it cut out or pulled out, and it's a several minute ordeal in the net, and they don't ever show any signs of stress. So, I think it really depends on the fish. You might get the wrong fish on the wrong day, and you could kill it. It's just the nature of the beast. So you don't want that to happen. So you want a quick, clean catch and release if all possible.
Nice.
I think that makes a very valid point, because there's a lot of arguments about that with all game fish. When guys are like, you're going to stress out the fish, you're going to kill the fish. It is what it's the nature of the beast, A, and B, like you said, every fish is so different. It's how long was the fight? How erratic was the fish in the middle of the fight? I know we have a ton of that with game fish when we mess with them, and guys give us trouble, catching a 50-pound bass, and they're like, oh, you're dragging it behind the boat when you're trolling. Well, yeah, but we're also getting that's a whole different ballgame, because you're trolling and the water's coming over their gills. You're actually oxygenating that fish, and that fish is actually getting life back to it. So a lot of guys give us trouble, and it's got to be the same thing where you get a lot of negativity about the muskie and handling them.
Yeah, the fly fishing community, and these guys that I did the podcast with brought this up, that there's grumblings that, fly fishermen overstress their fish and stuff like that. Like I land my fish as quick as any deer do to land their fish with my flies. Like they don't, unless you catch a really big one, they don't fight overly hard. It's, you have them in the net in 15 seconds or so, now the big girls, they fight a lot harder. The closer you get to 50 inch, the less the harder it is to get them in, and unless they want to get put in the net. So that's a little bit different story. But, I just think that if you fish in water temperatures that are cold enough, that, you shouldn't have too many issues with hurting a fish.
Is that with trout? You hear guys talking about trout and certain temperatures. You don't want to get those fish in those.
Trout, they stress out real easy too, and too warm of temperatures. 60, low to mid 60s is like the max on those guys, on the trout that you want to be fishing. So, I just think you got to be smart and just fish cooler water temperatures, and then you shouldn't have any problem, as long as you get them in and out quick, revive them and get them moving. So,
gotcha. So I do got a curiosity as you were talking a little bit ago. You talked about, a deep swallowed hook and retrieving that or cutting it. A lot of people have a problem with that with, even bass. But now you throw teeth into the mix. What's your usual, you got a deep swallow. Is it easier to just, get down there, cut the line? Or do you get down, try to split the hook? Or do you try to retrieve it?
Well, if it's in their gills, you don't ever want to try to mess with them. You just try to cut the hook and just, get rid of the fish, get it back into the water and let it, because you start fiddling with those gills and you're going to kill the fish regardless if you get the hook out or not. So the best practice is to cut that hook out. I've been fortunate. I've never had to really cut. I've only had to cut one. It was for a client. I had to cut one fly out of its gill, and I just cut the hook. I didn't even worry about the fly, and I got it back into the water. And you hope they make it, but it's just part of the game. You do it enough times, you're going to probably kill fish that you can't. But I don't try ever monkeying around with their gills. I mean, if it's down in their throat, it makes it easy to use the jaw spreader, hold your jaw open and get down and cut the hook off, and then get the majority of your fly out, and then just let them deal with the hook that's in their throat. So,
yeah.
I guess that's probably a good thing with a muskie, because you're stripping the line, it's moving, and like you said, he T-bones it. So you're not really getting too many aggressive hits from the back or from the head or anything like that. Like you're not getting that swallowing hook like it would be with some other fish.
Exactly right. I don't hardly ever have to deal with that type of stuff. That the one that my client, we had a smaller fly on, and that fish was hungry, and it just inhaled it. It just happens, but I don't get it often where I have to monkey. I have a buddy that he gear fishes all the time, and we've had to cut hooks out of his fish, more than I've ever had to do out of my flies. I hardly ever get to deal with that. So,
gotcha.
And I know with like stripers and stuff, they hit it from the head and they suck the whole thing down. And if you're using something that has a front treble, we try and not use it, because literally, like even top waters, I mean, dude, they'll smoke that thing from the top, and literally they'll take it from the front and it's down there. Like it's down. Like, and that happens because there's such an aggressive eating fish from the front, and that becomes a problem.
You guys eat their stripers?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
And they're absolutely phenomenal.
It's a very simple, mild fish. So like you can do so much with it. I think like we have a ton of different ways that we eat it. Like we do skin on, sear it with like, you can do like a mango salsa and do it that way. You can do fish cakes. I mean, you can do anything with it because it's such a simple, mild fish and can be used different ways. I think that's one of the problems with striped bass, because if muskies were like very good eating, there would be a whole different world where people were killing them and keeping them, and they have to deal with that aspect of it. With stripers, we get that because are they really good trophy fish, but they're also really good eating. So like you're kind of tossed in between, like, I don't know. It's kind of a crazy world that we live in when it comes to that, because people kind of shun on you. And like we're at the point where we can't. It's 28 to 35, so we have a small slot. So that's like our medium fish. You can't kill the big ones. I think it's a perfect slot where edible fish are.
Absolutely. There's nothing wrong with eating fish. I mean, that's what they're there for.
Right.
I bet that's how it is with your steelheads and stuff like that. Like a lot of guys keep them and eat them
Well,
because they're such good eating fish.
my clients, for the most part, the majority of them don't keep them. But I get a handful of people every season that want to keep them, and that's their right, and I don't begrudge them. My only role with those people is they have to carry them around all day.
Right. Absolutely.
Inch fish around all day with a rope, you know?
Now, are you doing your steelhead and stuff from the shore?
Yeah. Yep. It's all stream fishing in the tributaries of Lake Erie. I've a guide in Ohio, Pennsylvania, and New York. So.
Oh, that's crazy. So guys would just get a hold of you if you wanted to fish those areas?
Oh, yeah. Yep. I got a lot of people on my schedule already, and probably by the end of summer, I'll be totally booked through December, probably.
Wow.
Go ahead and trout and muskie. I'm blocking out weeks for my muskie trips right now, where I'll only do muskie trips because, those are a good full moon or new moon week. So I think I got 3 weeks of the muskie trips already booked also.
Awesome.
And you're only doing your steelhead trips, are they on the fly also?
Yep, everything's on the fly.
No center pin.
Nope.
All fly rod.
Yep, I get people occasionally. Hey, do you mind if I spin fish? And I'm like, because their worry is they never fly fished before. But part of the reason that I started my guide service was to teach people that fly fishing isn't that difficult if you know how to do it. So. And it's doesn't have to be a complicated sport. It's actually pretty simple, and I make people deals, and I've done this several times over the years where I say, you can bring your spin gear, but I want you to try to fly fish first. And if you don't like the fly fishing, then you can go to your spin gear. And I've never had one person that tried fly fishing that ever wanted to use their spinning gear after that. So once they start doing it, and they enjoy it so much that, they're hooked on it. So.
Yep.
Is your fly fishing gear that you're using like a Oswego or up that way, like northern New York, they use you use a bunch of split shots on the line. Like, are you fishing that same technique, or is it you fishing a different technique with the fly rod?
I'm doing a different. That's probably a drop shot deal that they're using. I just use a simple drifting setup, and I'll use an egg. I mean, this is a lot of what I use for my clients. I have different weighted eggs that I tie up with different weight heads on them. And depending on the water speed and depth and stuff like that, I'll get the proper egg size that I want. And I tie like a white death, which is just a tiny little streamer off of the back of that egg. And then that egg's bouncing on the bottom, and that little streamer's tailing behind it. And the fish usually will eat that little streamer tailing behind it, but they'll eat the egg too. And that's and we'll use an indicator up above, like a little bobber. And it's just a simple setup, and it makes it real easy for people that never done it before. It lets them be successful in doing it, and everybody has a blast doing it. And so that's what we do. Now, if I get people that are a little more polished up on fly fishing. I got guys that like to throw streamers, and they'll use streamers and stuff like that for them. And, the steelhead are, when the water temps are good, they're usually pretty bitey on streamers. They work real well. So that's basically the two different setups that we use.
That's awesome. I think I like the versatility of the two different worlds that you get to live in, man.
Yeah. It's honestly a pretty cool deal, because being on our tributaries gets a little stressful with the crowds, and I work real hard to get my clients on good areas, before daybreak, and that starts the day off proper, is getting them on fish early, before the crowds get out. So dealing with that for a week straight every day, and dealing with other people and people trying to crowd you out and stuff like that. It's nice to have a week where I get on my boat and we're out there chucking big streamers for muskie. It's a whole different vibe. There's nobody else out there. you're after the apex predator fish in North America. And, so it is nice, and it's nice to switch it up. So
you go from stressful to really stressful.
Yeah.
Because that makes sense.
No, the fishing and the guiding for the muskie isn't stressful at all. It's actually really exciting doing the muskie, because you never know what cast is going to be the cast, you know what I mean, that a fish is going to. It's like, it's suspense the whole time, like all day. It's like suspense, and then when it happens, it's like adrenaline overload, and there's like a massive rush of adrenaline for 30 seconds. You get the fish in the net, and then you're like hugging your client, and then it's decompression after that. So it's actually not stressful at all.
That's awesome, man. Well, I guess with that, I want to know, what drives you outdoors, Scott?
What drives me outdoors?
Not your boat, not your car, not your feet.
What drives me, like literally?
Yeah, what gets you out there, man? Like you just said, like hugging your client and doing that. Like what makes you want to go and guide every single day and be in the outdoors and musky fish? And
well, because number one for me, it's like with the muskie, I know the feeling of catching a muskie on a fly, and I want to share that feeling with as many people as I can. Like, it's literally like winning the Super Bowl when you make it happen. Like, it's not an easy feat. So when you can accomplish that with somebody that's never done it, it's huge. So that's what drives me outdoors, and what drives me to being a better fly angler myself, and gets me up in the middle of the night going out trying to learn these fish, their tendencies as much as I can. And because in turn, me doing all that's going to help me be a better guide and helping other people accomplish that goal. That's what it boils down to. I told these guys a month ago that I'm literally trying to build a culture around, this muskie on the fly fishing, because it's not a big group of people that do it. I'm trying to build this sport and getting more people involved in to do it, and then trying it and experiencing it. And, it's only going to help the fish in the long run, because the more money going into the sport, the more, it's going to hopefully help the fish in general, help habitat and stuff like that. So that's what drives me outdoors.
Outstanding. That's, what more can you ask for? I mean, giving someone that first is always just the greatest feeling in the world. I mean,
I'll take that first. That's a good first.
Yeah.
Well, listen, guy this spring never touched a fly rod, not for trout, not for bluegill, not for bass, never touched one in his life. And he contacted me about a muskie on a fly trip. And, I'm pretty optimistic, but in the back of my head, I'm like, if he can even cast these flies, it'll be a success. That dude freaking landed 3 muskie, and he had lost 2 other ones. 5, never touching a fly rod period in his life. So right there, that should tell people that are listening that you don't have to be, fly fishermen to at least try it. And, you never know, you could be successful,
Yeah, that's a fulfilling day right there.
Yeah.
You can't ask for a better day than that.
I mean, going into it, catching one would be a bonus.
Or seeing one come after your fly, to me, a lot of times with someone that's never done it before, is a success. Hey, you moved the fish. That's incredible. You're doing something right, that you made that fish come after your fly, But to catch 3, yeah, that was awesome. So
that's impressive. That really is, honestly.
Well, Scott, where can everybody find you? How can they get a hold of you? And now that everybody is dug in and wants to go do this, how do they book?
Well, I have a website, keystoneanglers.com, www.keystoneanglersguideservice.com. I'm on Facebook under the same name, Instagram under the same name. I started doing the TikTok thing. That TikTok thing's it's pretty hard to figure out the algorithms with trying to get your videos out there, get them out there visible. But I'm on TikTok too, and my name on there is gmoney5381. That's my personal Instagram name. So any of those avenues are ways to get in contact with me, and we can discuss trip options through that.
Outstanding. Well, I think we're going to have to stay in touch because I'm going to be picking your brain before this fall comes around for sure.
Absolutely. That's what I'm here for. Don't hesitate. I love helping people out.
Well, I know me and Trev have talked about it. And this year, now that I've got the so-called secret hole, I think we're going to put a good run at it when the water cools down. So
We should just get Scott to come up and teach us how to do
just like, hey,
Shenandoah.
come down to Virginia and show us how it's done.
Oh, I've been wanting to hit Virginia up for so long. I see these guys down there catching all these muskie. It's like, I got to get Virginia.
Yeah.
Well, you got the in now.
I've got the launch for you. It's a private launch and nobody fishes them up there. So,
well, I'm going to definitely hit you guys up. So the good time to go down there is in the winter, huh?
Yeah. Yeah. Because it takes a lot to get this water to cool down.
Okay. Yeah, because sometimes up here it gets so cold you can't fish. It freezes everything up.
When you guys freeze over, our water's perfect.
Okay. I'll definitely
Early spring.
Yeah.
When it's still cool.
Enjoy coming down there for a few days fishing with you guys. So
yeah, that'd be an absolute blast. Well,
all right.
Scott.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah, it's been an absolute pleasure. We've had a blast. I know I'm all geeked up, like wishing I could go out and start fiddling around with it right now, but I gotta wait. But we'll get to it, and hopefully we'll get some more eyes and interest going in on this, and get some more people sent your way. So
I appreciate that very much. Thanks for having me on, guys.
Hey, it's an absolute pleasure, and for everyone out there listening, I mean, this is a fish of a lifetime. Get out there, go try it, go catch you one. And until then, guys, thanks for taking the ride right here on the Outdoor Drive.